The media are lying to you about elections, and they have been for about a year now. The media's big lie boils down to a simple two-word phrase.
A fresh push on voting rights legislation.
Democrats are forcing a Senate vote on voting rights.
Call to action to protect voting rights.
Voting rights showdown.
The showdown over voting rights.
The big lie's corrosive effect on voting rights.
This is a lie. Not a single election measure enacted over the past year has taken away any law-abiding citizen's right to vote. It's not happening. It's a lie. Let's break down why this is wrong. A right is something that the government is forced to permit its citizens to do. The right to vote means that the government has to allow all law-abiding citizens in this country to vote. Out of all the election reforms passed by red states over the past year, the ones that have the media all up in arms about voting rights, none of them remove the right to vote from a single law-abiding citizen. You could spend the rest of your life Googling and not find a single person who was stripped of their right to vote by these laws. When the media say,
Rolling back voter rights,
they're lying to you. The logic of the media's big lie goes like this. Any law which makes voting even slightly less convenient is a deliberate attack on the right to vote. Let's give that logic a test drive. Take a look at any given election law and then ask, does this make voting more or less convenient? If it makes it more convenient, it's a good law. If not, it's a bad law. Requiring someone to prove their identity before they can vote? Bad law. No more dropping ballots in unguarded boxes on the sidewalk? Bad law. Expecting people to vote on election day? Bad law. No unauthorized ballot harvesting? Terrible. I'm going to repeat myself because it's important. None of that is an infringement on anybody's rights. These are all real examples, by the way, of provisions that the media freaked out over. They're literally the measures that the media point to when they scream about voting rights. You might have heard about some case somewhere where a person wasn't allowed to vote because they forgot to bring ID with them, or they showed up at the wrong precinct, or whatever. But that's not a story about someone losing their rights. It's a story about a procedural mishap. Think about it this way. There's a law that says I can't buy a handgun without a government-issued ID. But that law doesn't deny me my Second Amendment rights. I still have those rights. I just can't exercise them without meeting whatever criteria my state requires. It works the same with voting. So why are state legislatures even passing these laws in the first place? The short answer is security. It's marginally harder to show your ID than it is not to, but making people do that makes elections more secure. It'd also be easier if you could just email the government and let them know which candidate you support. But obviously we don't allow that either, for the same reason. The media are intentionally missing the point here. Making voting slightly less convenient isn't even the goal of these laws. It's just an unavoidable byproduct. Again, the goal is security. Voter ID laws aren't wildly popular because 80% of Americans are jerks who want to make life slightly less easy for everyone. They're popular because they prevent possible fraud, and 80% of Americans happen to think that's a worthwhile trade-off. The media's big lie is that this is a fight between Republicans who want to dismantle the right to vote and Democrats who want to preserve it. In reality, it's a fight over how much convenience we should be sacrificing in the name of security. This lie is meant to simplify everything down to the level of a crappy children's storybook. So, how do the good guys in this media fairy tale propose that we
Protect voting rights.
Let's see what the media suggests.
The current threat to democracy requires real, tangible change. So we begin today with crucial legislation that has a direct impact on your life.
There's the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. That's one of the bills the Democrats want to pass.
The John Lewis Voting Rights Bill is so important.
The Freedom to Vote Act, as I mentioned, Senator Joe Manchin co-authored it, but it still requires a rules change in order to get it across the finish line.
I'm hopeful that they will use every tool available to them to pass these rights because it falls exclusively to them.
The media talk about these two bills like they're democracy's last great hope. There's a lot in them, but most notably, both of them would give the Department of Justice the ability to override any state election law at will. Keep in mind, the DOJ is part of the federal government, and it's run by the Attorney General, a presidential appointee. That means that these laws would give the sitting president's hand-picked appointee massive control over the entire electoral system. Look at the last few presidents and then ask yourself, do you know a single person who'd be happy with all of those guys having that much power over American elections? How many Democrats do you know who'd have been fine with giving the last guy that kind of authority?
This vile, immoral, corrupt, indecent, dangerous...
But right now, the president's a Democrat. And so we get the entire media establishment screeching about voter rights and lying through their teeth about the impending death of our democracy. All of this is to say, the media have gone too far this time. This is a self-inflicted death blow to their own credibility. Yeah, they're in the tank for one side, again, But that's always been true. Media bias is nothing new, bad as it's become. But the brazen lying has to stop. If these con artists want to sell propaganda for a living, then fine, they can go work in politics. But they should get the hell out of journalism before they permanently destroy its reputation.